All names in this story has been changed. Man, let me tell you a story. You know, sometimes life gives you these moments that make no sense, right? You try to figure it out, but no matter how much you think about it, you can't. And this thing that happened to me, it's one of those moments. It all started during Hmong New Year. My cousins and I decided to rent an RV and go camping for the weekend. You know, something different. We'd been busy with work and school and needed a break. Plus, we figured we'd have some good food, tell some old stories, and just chill. The RV was pretty nice. Not too big, but big enough for all five of us. Me, my cousin B, his girlfriend Mai, and two of our friends, Kong and Lee. We found a camping spot out in the countryside of California, a few hours from the city. It was quiet, cold, and surrounded by tall trees that seemed to stretch forever into the sky. A perfect spot for us to hang out without anyone bothering us. The first night was all fun. We made BBQ, played music, and laughed until our stomachs hurt. Mai even brought this homemade rice wine her mom made. It was strong but smooth, and we all had a little too much of it. The second night, though, that's when things started getting weird. It was around midnight, and we were sitting around the campfire telling ghost stories. You know, just trying to scare each other for fun. Mai told a story about a ghost who lived in the trees and how it would come down at night looking for people who weren't respectful to their elders. Kong laughed and said it sounded like something our grandparents would make up to keep us in line. But then B, man, he got serious. He leaned in close to the fire and said, "You guys ever heard of the ghost that haunts RVs? It's a Hmong ghost. Real story." We all laughed because B always liked to make up stuff, but he didn't laugh back. He just stared at the fire. "I'm serious," he said. "My dad told me about it. He said back in Laos, during the war, people used to live in these metal homes, like RVs. They'd hide there because it was safer than being in the villages where the fighting was. But some of them never made it out. They died, and now their spirits follow RVs. If you stay in one, you have to be careful. Sometimes they'll knock on the doors or windows trying to get in, and if you let them in..." B didn't finish the sentence. He just shrugged and sat back like it was no big deal. Of course, we all thought it was just another story to freak us out. But later that night, I realized it wasn't just a story. We all went to bed around 1 a.m. I was in one of the bunks, right by the window. The RV was quiet, except for Kong snoring. I was half asleep when I heard it. A faint tapping on the window next to me. Tap, tap, tap. At first I thought it was a tree branch or something, but when I looked out the window there were no trees close enough to touch the RV. Just darkness and the faint outline of the forest in the moonlight. I told myself it was probably just the wind or an animal and tried to go back to sleep. But then I heard it again. Tap, tap, tap. This time it was louder. I sat up and looked around. The others were all asleep, their breathing slow and steady. I leaned over to the window and whispered, "Hello?" Big mistake. As soon as I said it, the tapping stopped. For a second I thought maybe I scared it away, whatever it was. But then I heard something even worse. A soft voice, so quiet I could barely hear it, whispering my name. "Chi." My blood ran cold. I didn't even want to move. It sounded like it was coming from outside, but the voice, it sounded familiar, like someone I knew but couldn't quite place. I told myself I was just imagining things. Maybe I was still half asleep or something, but then the voice came again. Louder this time. "Chi, let me in!" I jumped out of the bunk and woke up B. I told him what I heard, and at first he thought I was joking. But when I told him how serious I was, his face went pale. "Did you say anything to it?" he asked. I nodded. "Yeah, I said hello." "Why?" B cursed under his breath. "You're not supposed to talk to them. Once you talk to them, they know you can hear them. They won't stop until you let them in." I laughed nervously, trying to brush it off. "Come on, man. You're just messing with me, right? B shook his head. I told you, it's the RV ghost. We spent the rest of the night sitting in the living area with the lights on, trying to stay awake. Every now and then we'd hear noises, soft taps on the windows, the sound of footsteps outside, even faint whispers. But we didn't dare look outside or open the door. The next morning we decided to pack up and leave. None of us said much as we drove back to the city. The mood was heavy, like we all knew something had happened, but didn't want to talk about it. That night, when I got home, I thought it was over. I told myself it was just my imagination, maybe a prank bee set up to scare me. But as I was lying in bed, drifting off to sleep, I heard it again, tap, tap, tap. This time it was on my bedroom window. Man, I tell you, when I heard that tapping on my bedroom window, I froze. My whole body just locked up. I didn't want to look. I didn't even want to breathe. My room is on the second floor, so whatever was tapping on the window couldn't be human. That thought made my stomach drop. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, pretending I couldn't hear it. But the tapping didn't stop. It got louder. Tap, tap, tap. Chi! The voice came again, soft but clear. Let me in. It was the same voice from the RV. I swear it sounded so familiar, like someone I should know. That's what scared me the most. How did it know where I lived? How did it know my name? I tried to convince myself it wasn't real. I told myself I was just hearing things. Maybe I was still spooked from the trip and my brain was playing tricks on me. But then I heard something that shattered any hope of it being in my head. The window latch clicked. I bolted upright in bed, my heart pounding. My eyes darted to the window and I swear I saw the latch move on its own, like invisible hands were trying to open it. The tapping turned into banging, like whatever was outside was getting impatient. Bang, bang, bang. Let me in! The voice was louder now, almost angry. I grabbed my blanket and threw it over my head like a little kid. I know it sounds dumb, but I didn't know what else to do. And then, just like that, the banging stopped. The room went dead silent. I swallowed hard, got up, and looked at the window again. The latch was still in place, but there was a faint outline of a handprint on the glass. Not a normal handprint, though. The fingers were too long, and the palm was smudged, like it had been dragging across the surface. I couldn't take it anymore. I jumped out of bed, grabbed my car keys, and ran downstairs. I didn't care if it was the middle of the night. I had to get out of there. I got in my car and drove straight to my parents' house. I don't know why, I guess it just felt safe. When I got there, it was late, but I didn't care. I banged on the door until my dad came down in his pajama pants, looking all confused. "What's going on?" he asked, squinting at me like I'd lost my mind. I walked in and started spilling everything. I told him about the RV, the tapping, the woman, all of it. My mom came out of her room while I was talking, and the look on her face, it scared me more than the ghost. She wasn't mad or confused, she looked worried. When I finished, my dad was quiet for a while. Then he nodded and said, "We need to call someone." That's when I knew it was serious. Hmong parents don't just call someone unless it's life or death. The next morning, my parents called a shaman. He showed up with a few tools, a gong, some strings, incense, and this big sword-looking thing. He didn't waste time asking questions. He just said, "Take me to the spot." So there we were, driving back to the campsite, me, my parents, and the shaman. The whole drive, I couldn't stop looking in the mirrors, half expecting to see her face pop up behind me. When we got there, the place looked even creepier in the daylight. The fire pit was cold and cracked, and the trees felt like they were leaning in, watching us. The shaman got out and started setting up. He tied string around the trees to create some kind of boundary, then lit incense and placed it near the fire pit. The whole time he didn't say much, just moved with this quiet focus that made me feel both safe and nervous. He started chanting, low and rhythmic. My parents stood behind him, heads bowed, and I just kind of hovered awkwardly, not knowing what to do. Then, out of nowhere, the air changed. It got colder, like way colder. I could see my breath, even though it was the middle of the day. "Don't move," the shaman said, his voice firm. I froze. That's when I saw her standing just beyond the string boundary. The ghost, or whatever it was, looked like a Hmong woman dressed in traditional clothing. Her face was pale, almost glowing. She didn't cross the boundary, but she stared right at me, like she was waiting for something. The shaman's chanting got louder, and he started hitting the gong. The sound echoed through the trees, almost vibrating in my chest. My mom grabbed my arm and whispered, "Don't look at her. Keep your eyes on the ground." I tried, but it was hard. I could feel her presence, like she was boring holes into me. The shaman kept chanting, his voice rising and falling like waves, and then suddenly he stopped. "It's done," he said. I looked up, and she was gone. Just like that, the air warmed up, and everything felt normal again. The shaman turned to me and said, "She followed you because you didn't ask for permission to be on this land." "Permission?" I asked, confused. He nodded. "Spirits guard places like this. They don't like it when strangers show up uninvited. Next time, if you camp somewhere, offer incense or food as a gesture of respect, and don't ever call out to anything in the dark." We packed up and left after that. The whole drive home, I couldn't stop thinking about what he said. It made me realize how much I didn't know about my own culture. Since that day, I've been more careful. I don't go on road trips anymore, and if I have to camp somewhere, I follow the rules. It's not worth the risk. And that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the stories. If you did, be sure to explore more videos on the screens above, or visit my channel for more content. Hit subscribe to stay updated with my latest videos. Stay safe and see you next time.